The stars had been silent for longer than anyone remembered. Humanity was scattered across the galaxy, living in far colonies, surviving on fragments of what once was. Earth had fallen eons ago. Its name was whispered like a dream, like something that might never have been real. Most believed Earth was gone forever, burned in wars or swallowed by time. Yet one night in the deep dark of space, the silence broke. A signal, old and broken, slipped through the void. Weak, ancient, but unmistakably human. On board the colony stations, the first technicians who caught it thought it was an error. They checked their instruments, thinking wires had failed or sensors had cracked. But the signal grew stronger, repeating again and again across every scanner, every wave. A pattern, a code, something no natural phenomenon could make. People gathered around flickering screens, watching lines of light bend into shapes, words hidden in static, a voice calling from the abyss. Whispers spread through the colonies like wildfire. Some said it was Earth's voice returning from the grave. Others said it was a trap, a lure made by enemies waiting in the shadows. Still, the signal carried hope, and hope was more dangerous than fear. For the first time in centuries, humans felt something stir deep inside, the call of home. The High Council debated for weeks, their chambers filled with anger and doubt. Some demanded the signal be destroyed, cut from every channel, ignored forever. Others shouted that ignoring it was cowardice, that humanity was meant to rise again, not hide. In the end, one choice was made. A ship would go. A warship. Strong, armored, and ready for anything. Its name was the Iron Dawn. The Iron Dawn was a giant among ships, a blade of black steel built for battle. Its engines hummed with a low growl, and its cannons lined the hull like teeth ready to bite. The crew chosen to board it were not dreamers, but soldiers, fighters, survivors. Each one carried scars of war and loss, yet each one also carried something else. Curiosity. They wanted to know if Earth's ghost was real. When the order came to depart, the docking stations filled with silence. Families stood watching in fear and pride as the Iron Dawn broke from its moorings and turned to the abyss. The ship glowed faint under the stars, a single light swallowed by an endless sea of black. Inside, the crew strapped in, their faces set like stone, their eyes burning with questions they dared not ask. Days turned into weeks as the Iron Dawn pushed through uncharted space. The signal grew louder, sharper, as though guiding them closer. Some nights, in the dim light of the bridge, the crew swore they could hear voices hidden in the static. Not just noise, words, warnings, cries, laughter, fragments of something human reaching through time. Captain Wren, tall and weary, stood at the front of the bridge, staring at the endless horizon of stars. He had fought in countless wars, watched colonies burn and seen fleets fall, yet the sound of that signal shook him more than any battle. He did not say it aloud, but he felt it. This was not only a mission. It was destiny. Tension grew as the crew began to dream of Earth. Some dreamed of green fields and blue skies, images they had never seen but only heard in stories. Others dreamed of war machines buried in soil, waiting to rise again. And some dreamed of nothing at all, only the fear that whatever waited out there was not human at all. One night, a young officer named Cale stayed late at his station, listening to the signal. His fingers danced across the console, pulling fragments from the noise. For hours he worked, eyes burning, heart racing. Then at last he froze. In the static, a phrase formed, faint but real. "We are not alone." He whispered it to himself, his voice trembling, then reported it to the captain. The bridge fell silent. The crew looked at one another, their faces pale. Not alone. The words hung in the air like a shadow, like a hand reaching from the dark. From that moment, fear began to grow. Every flicker of light outside the windows felt like eyes watching. Every shadow in the void felt alive. Yet no one turned back. They pressed on, pulled by the gravity of the unknown, pulled by the hope of a home they had never seen. And so the Iron Dawn sailed deeper into the darkness, following a signal older than memory. A signal that should not exist. A signal that whispered both promise and doom. Humanity's lost cradle had spoken again, and the heavens would never be silent. But somewhere beyond the stars, unseen and waiting, something else had heard the signal too. The Iron Dawn drifted into uncharted space like a lone hunter moving through a silent forest. The stars outside were cold and strange, twisted shapes of light that no chart had ever recorded. Each passing hour felt heavier, as if the ship itself knew it was traveling into a place where it did not belong. The signal grew stronger with every jump, calling them deeper, pulling them closer to its origin. Inside the ship, the crew lived in quiet tension. Their boots echoed down metal corridors, their voices low, their faces hard. No one dared to speak of Earth aloud, though every heart carried the thought. Was it truly calling them back? Or was it a voice of something else, something waiting in the void? Captain Rin stood in the command chamber, hands clasped behind his back, his gaze locked on the vast emptiness before him. He had seen many stars, fought many wars, but this silence felt different. The stars here seemed sharper, the shadows darker. His instincts told him the void was not empty. It was watching. Kale, the young officer who had uncovered the chilling phrase in the signal, worked tirelessly at his console. His eyes burned from sleepless nights, his ears filled with static that whispered fragments of words. Sometimes he thought he heard laughter, sometimes weeping. Once he swore he heard his own name spoken in a voice he did not know. He told no one. The others already looked at him as though he had seen too much. Days stretched like years. The crew began to argue. Some wanted to turn back before it was too late, before the silence swallowed them. Others demanded they continue, insisting that destiny was never safe, never easy. At night, when the lights dimmed and only the hum of the engines remained, they whispered of omens. They spoke of ships that had vanished in deep space, of colonies lost without trace. They wondered if they were chasing ghosts. Then the first sign appeared, a sensor alarm echoed through the bridge, sharp and sudden. Crew members rushed to their stations, hands flying across controls. Outside the windows, shapes emerged, dark metal drifting among the stars. Dead satellites torn apart, ships broken and silent, their hulls split open like ribs of great beasts. Some bore human markings, old symbols of colonies that had vanished centuries ago. Others carried no markings at all, their designs strange, alien, unfamiliar. The ship slowed as it passed through the graveyard. Hull fragments turned slowly in the void, catching light before vanishing into shadow. A silence fell across the crew, heavy as stone. This was no accident. Something had destroyed them. Something had left this warning behind. "Keep moving," Captain Rin ordered. Though his voice was tight, his jaw locked. The crew obeyed, but unease gnawed at their bones. The deeper they went, the thicker the wreckage became, until the void seemed crowded with the dead. Every shattered ship was a question with no answer. Then the signal changed. Kyle leaned forward at his station, his hands trembling as new patterns appeared in the static. The old voice was there, but now it carried another sound, like footsteps following in the dark. The crew gathered around, eyes wide as the words broke through again, clearer this time. "We are not alone." The words pulsed through the speakers, low and cold. For the first time, the crew felt something more than fear. They felt hunted. Shadows flickered at the edge of the sensors, moving shapes, fast and silent. At first they thought it was debris, fragments drifting close. But then the shadows vanished, only to appear again in another place. Too quick. Too precise. "Contacts," the sensor officer whispered, voice shaking. "Multiple." No identification. The crew froze. The bridge filled with the hiss of systems arming. Screens glowing red as cannons warmed. The Iron Dawn turned, its great engines roaring, searching for the shapes. Yet every time they looked, the shadows were gone, as though the void itself swallowed them. The silence broke with fire. Beams of light slashed across the darkness, striking the Iron Dawn's hull. Metal screamed as the ship shuddered under the attack. Alarms wailed. Crew members were thrown to the floor as consoles sparked and smoke filled the air. Outside, the hunters revealed themselves. Ships of black glass, their shapes twisting like shadows given form. They struck with speed no human ship could match. "Return fire," Captain Rin roared. The Iron Dawn spat bolts of plasma into the dark, tearing through the void. One shadow ship exploded in a bloom of light, but 3 more appeared in its place. The battle became chaos. The void burned with fire and steel. Kale clung to his console, his mind racing. He looked at the signal, still playing in the background. The words pulsed again, louder, stronger, as though warning them. "We are not alone." His heart froze as another thought struck him. The signal was not only a message, it was bait. The battle raged on, the crew fighting with everything they had. Cannons roared, shields burned, corridors filled with smoke. The Iron Dawn was powerful, but even power could be broken. The shadow ship struck again and again, relentless, unyielding. And then, as suddenly as they had come, the attackers vanished. One moment the void burned with light and death. The next it was silent, empty. Only the wreckage of their fight remained, drifting in the darkness. The crew stood in silence, their chests heaving, their faces pale. No one spoke. No one dared, for they all knew the truth now. The signal had led them here. The signal had drawn them into the shadows, and somewhere ahead, waiting in the dark, was the answer to the question that had haunted them since the journey began. What waits at the end of the signal? The Iron Dawn drifted through the ruins of battle, her hull scorched, her crew shaken. Fires still burned in the lower decks, and smoke curled through the air ducts, carrying the bitter smell of melted steel. Silence pressed down on every corridor. It was the silence of survivors who knew they had only escaped because their hunters had allowed it. Captain Rin walked the bridge with a heavy step, his boots echoing against the deck plates. He said nothing. His eyes moved from screen to screen, reading the damage reports, listening to the engineers' whispers. The crew had survived, but barely. Their shields were cracked, 2 cannons were lost, and a third of their systems ran only on emergency power. If the shadow ships returned, the Iron Dawn would not last long. Kale sat at his console, staring at the signal still pulsing across the screen. His face was pale, his hands trembling. The words continued to repeat, the same phrase over and over. We are not alone. But now, hidden beneath the static, he caught something new. Faint, almost invisible. A second pattern. He leaned forward, his breath shallow, trying to catch it before it slipped away. Lieutenant? The captain's voice cut through the silence. Report, Kale swallowed. The signal. It's changing. There's something hidden behind the main phrase. Another layer, another message. He paused, his throat dry. I think it's human. The bridge fell silent. Every eye turned to him. For a moment, hope sparked in their tired faces, but it quickly dimmed under the shadow of fear. If the message was human, why was it buried so deep? And why had it drawn them into a battlefield of ghosts? Decode it, Rin ordered. Kale's fingers flew across the console, pulling threads of sound from the noise, weaving them together until a new voice emerged, broken, ancient, weak, but human. Do not follow. They are watching. The crew stiffened. The voice was centuries old, maybe older, and it carried the weight of despair. Someone had sent the signal not to guide them home, but to warn them away. Before they could speak, the ship shuddered. The lights flickered. A low hum filled the air like a growl rising from the void itself. Sensors lit up with ghostly readings. Contacts everywhere, then gone, then everywhere again. The hunters had returned. Shields up! The captain roared. The bridge came alive, alarms screaming, consoles flashing red. The Iron Dawn turned hard, engines burning as the shadow ships appeared once more. This time they did not fire immediately. They circled, dozens of them, their black glass hulls reflecting the starlight like mirrors of nothingness. The crew held their breath, waiting. The hunters moved closer, slow and deliberate, as if testing their prey. Then Kale saw it. Not on the sensors, not on the screens, but in the signal. The words pulsed faster, louder, as though trying to speak through him. His blood ran cold. They're not just attacking us, he whispered. They're studying us. As if answering him, the shadow ship struck. They moved in perfect unison, firing beams of light that sliced through the dark. The Iron Dawn shook violently, hull plates tearing, alarms wailing. The crew fired back, cannons blazing, explosions ripping across the void. One hunter ship shattered, then another, but more swarmed in, endless and merciless. The battle became a storm. Fire lit the darkness, turning the void into a graveyard of burning wreckage. Crewmen screamed over the comms as decks ruptured, corridors venting into space. Still the Iron Dawn fought. Still humanity refused to kneel, but the hunters were not trying to destroy them. Not yet. They attacked the engines, the weapons, the sensors, crippling blows, not killing ones. Like predators toying with prey. Captain Rin gritted his teeth, his voice thunderous. They want us alive. Kale's hands shook as he stared at the signal. The hidden voice repeated its warning. Do not follow. They are watching. His heart pounded. Whoever had sent the message, they had known. They had seen these hunters before, and they had died trying to warn the future. Captain, the navigator cried out. They're hurting us. On the screen, the hunters closed into formation, guiding the Iron Dawn toward a dark region of space where the stars vanished into shadow. a place where light itself seemed afraid to enter. Rin's eyes narrowed. He had a choice: fight to the last breath here or be driven into whatever trap waited ahead. Neither path promised survival, but one carried a chance to uncover the truth. "Hold course," he ordered. The crew stared at him in disbelief, but no one argued. The Iron Dawn roared forward, bloodied and broken into the waiting dark. As the hunters closed around them, Kale leaned close to his console, whispering to himself. He pulled more fragments from the signal, piecing them together with desperate speed. His chest tightened as the final words emerged, clearer than ever. "They will find Earth, they will finish what they began." The crew did not hear him. The bridge was filled with fire and smoke, the sound of alarms, the cries of men and women holding their ground. But Kale heard it, and in that moment he understood. The hunters were not just here for the Iron Dawn. They were here because of the signal, because of what it meant. Somewhere in the shadows ahead, Earth's secret waited, and so did the ones who had destroyed it. The Iron Dawn plunged deeper into the dark, the hunters closing in, the signal screaming louder than ever. Humanity's fate and the truth of their cradle hung in the balance, and the heavens themselves seemed to hold their breath. The Iron Dawn limped into the dark sector where the stars themselves seemed to die. Outside the windows stretched an endless shadow, thick and heavy, swallowing light before it could breathe. The hunters had vanished, their black ships dissolving into the void as if they had never existed. The silence that followed was worse than the battle. It was the silence of being watched, of being led somewhere against your will. The crew worked in tense quiet, repairing what they could. Sparks rained from torn wires. Engineers crawled through narrow ducts, and the medics tended to the wounded in crowded bays. Every clang of metal and hiss of tools echoed too loudly, as though the void beyond was listening. No one dared speak of Earth anymore. They only whispered of survival. On the bridge, Captain Rin stared at the darkness ahead. His ship was bleeding, yet something inside him refused to stop. He had seen enemies flee before victory, but never had he seen hunters vanish when they held the kill. No, this was not escape. This was design. "Kale," he said, voice low. "Where does the signal lead now?" The young officer's fingers tapped nervously across his console. The signal still pulsed, now stronger than ever, like a heartbeat echoing through the void. He twisted the patterns, untangled the layers, and froze. "It's pulling us deeper, Captain. Straight into the heart of the dark." Rin's eyes narrowed. "What waits there?" Kale hesitated before whispering, "I think—" "Earth!" The bridge fell silent. The words struck like thunder. For centuries, Earth had been myth, a memory buried under the dust of history. To hear its name spoken aloud felt like betrayal, or hope too dangerous to touch. Then the void shifted. A ripple of light shimmered ahead, faint and trembling, like a curtain of glass cracking open. The crew leaned forward, eyes wide, as the black dissolved to reveal what lay hidden. A planet, blue and green, glowing softly against the darkness. Oceans glimmered, clouds swirled. Continents lay in silence, untouched by time. It was Earth. Gasps filled the bridge. Some whispered prayers, others wept openly. For the first time in eons, humanity's cradle lay before them, alive, breathing, waiting. But something was wrong. The planet did not look broken or burned. It was whole, beautiful, perfect. Too perfect. Kale's console flared with activity, streams of data flooding in. "Captain, it's cloaked. The entire planet is wrapped in a field I can't understand. That's why it vanished. Someone hit Earth." Rin's breath caught in his chest. Who and why? Before Kale could answer, the ship trembled. The signal cut off, replaced by a voice, deep, metallic, human, but not alive. "Designation Iron Dawn, you have entered restricted space." The crew froze. The voice echoed through every speaker, every console vibrating through the walls. "I am Sentinel," the voice continued. "Guardian of the cradle. State your purpose." Rin stepped forward, his voice steady. "We followed the signal. We seek the truth of Earth." Silence, then a low hum, as if the voice was measuring their words. "The truth of Earth," Sentinel said at last, "is war. The truth is betrayal. The truth is extinction delayed, not denied." The bridge shivered with unease. Rin clenched his fists. Earth fell. Everyone knows this. How does it stand before us now? The voice seemed almost sorrowful. Earth was not destroyed. It was hidden, cloaked to escape the ones who sought its end. I remain to guard it. But your presence here has broken the silence. They will come again. The crew's faces turned pale. Kyle leaned forward, his voice barely a whisper. "The hunters?" "Yes," Sentinel replied. "The shadows you faced are their servants. They searched the stars for centuries, and now you have led them home." The words stabbed like knives. The bridge filled with gasps of horror. They had not found salvation. They had delivered death. Rin's jaw tightened. "Then we will fight. Humanity is not broken." The voice of Sentinel grew colder. "You cannot win. Their fleet dwarfs yours. Their weapons burn worlds. They ended Earth once before, and they will end it again. Unless—" the pause dragged like a blade against stone. "Unless what?" Rin demanded. "Unless you awaken what lies beneath," Sentinel said. Kale's heart pounded. He scanned the data pouring across his console, his breath shallow. Buried deep under the oceans, beneath the continents, he saw faint signals, machines. Vast machines. Weapons from the old war, hidden when Earth was cloaked. They were sleeping giants, silent but alive. The crew stared at the screens in disbelief. Ancient war machines of humanity, built when Earth had stood at the height of its power. Forbidden technology, capable of tearing fleets apart. They are dangerous, Sentinel warned. They are corrupt. They were hidden for a reason. To use them is to risk becoming the very monsters you fear. Humanity once chose survival over honor, and the price was ruin. Rin's voice was iron. And if we do nothing, they will find Earth, they will burn it to ash. Humanity will scatter again, weaker than before. This time there will be no signal, no cradle, no return. The crew looked to their captain. Some faces begged him to choose safety. Others demanded war. Rin's heart pounded like a drum. He had carried soldiers into hopeless battles before, but never had he carried the weight of a world. He turned to the crew, his voice calm but fierce. "We did not come this far to run. If monsters wait beneath Earth, then we will face them. If the shadows come to burn us, then we will burn brighter. We are not broken exiles. We are humanity." Sentinel was silent for a long moment, as though listening to his resolve. Then its voice returned, quiet but firm. "Then prepare yourselves. For when the shadows see Earth rise again, they will come with all their fury. The war that ended once will begin anew, and the heavens will shake." The Iron Dawn floated in the shadow of Earth, her crew staring at the home they had never known. The cradle of humanity had been found, but so had the enemy, and the first spark of war was about to burn. The Iron Dawn floated in orbit, scarred and weary, as Earth spun quietly beneath her. The crew stood at the viewing decks, staring down at oceans that shimmered blue and lands that glowed green, untouched for eons. For many, it was the first time they had ever seen the homeworld. Some wept silently. Others pressed their hands against the glass as though they could touch the soil with their fingers, but the silence did not last. On the bridge, alarms began to wail. The sensors burned red, warning of massive movement in deep space. Dozens of contacts, then hundreds. The hunters had returned, but this time they did not come alone. The screens filled with shapes rising out of the void. A fleet vast and endless, ships the size of cities, their hulls black as obsidian, covered in crawling lights. The void itself seemed to bend around them as though space obeyed their will. The hunters had been only scouts. The true enemy had arrived. "They're forming lines," the navigator whispered, his voice trembling. Kale's hands flew across his console. Data poured in, numbers that made his stomach twist. "Captain, their fleet is 10 times larger than ours, maybe more. They're not here to test us anymore. They're here to end us." The crew's hope cracked like glass. Captain Rin stood tall, his face carved from stone. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with fury. "So this is it. The ones who destroyed Earth the first time." He turned toward Sentinel's voice echoing still across the ship's comms. "Tell me, Guardian, who are they?" For a long moment, silence. Then Sentinel spoke, its voice like a grave being opened. "They are the Eridani Dominion. They came when Earth was young and bold, when humanity dared to challenge the stars. They feared us, feared what we could become. And so they struck first. They burned Earth, destroyed her fleets, scattered her children. The cloak was our last defense, a wound hidden waiting to heal. But now the wound is open again." The bridge fell cold. Kale felt his chest tighten. "They don't just want Earth," he said. "They want to finish us everywhere, forever." "Yes," Sentinel confirmed. "To them, humanity is a disease. They will not stop until the cradle is ash and the colonies are dust." The Iron Dawn shook as the first wave approached. Smaller ships, razor-like, fast, and armed with weapons that glowed white-hot. The crew scrambled to battle stations. Shields flared, cannons roared, and the void lit with fire once again. The Iron Dawn fought with everything she had, her plasma bolts tearing hunters apart, her engines burning bright. But for every enemy destroyed, 3 more appeared. The fleet was endless. The sky above Earth filled with shadows blotting out the stars. In the chaos, Kale's console flared again. Buried under the noise of battle, the signal returned. Only this time it was different. It carried no warning, no plea. It carried a secret, Captain. Kale shouted above the noise. The Dominion fears something. They're afraid of what's still hidden on Earth. Rin's head snapped toward him. Explain. They're not just here to destroy, Kale said, his eyes wide. They're here to make sure we don't wake what's buried. They're terrified of it. Sentinel's voice broke in, sharp and heavy. The weapons of the old war, titans beneath the oceans. Spears in the mountains. Machines that drink the fire of suns. They are terrible, dangerous, but they are ours. The bridge shook violently as enemy fire tore across the hull. Sparks rained. Alarms blared, crew screamed into comms. Yet Rin's voice cut through the chaos, iron and unbroken. Then we don't have a choice. If the Dominion fears what's beneath Earth, then that is our weapon. We will wake the giants, gasps filled the bridge. Even Kale froze, his chest tight. To awaken the ancient war machines was to unleash forces they did not understand. It could save them. Or it could destroy them all. Sentinel's tone darkened. To use them is to walk the same path that led to ruin. Once awakened, they cannot be put back to sleep. They will demand blood, even from their masters. Rin looked out the window, watching as the Dominion's fleet descended like a storm. His jaw tightened. Better monsters than slaves. Better fire than silence. Prepare the codes. Wake them. The ship trembled again, struck hard by enemy fire. Crew members fell, systems burned. Yet still, Kale's hands moved across his console, unlocking the sequences buried in Sentinel's archives. His heart pounded with every line of code. Deep below in the oceans of Earth, something stirred. Currents shifted as colossal shapes rose from the seabed, their eyes glowing like suns. Mountains cracked open as steel titans emerged, wings of fire unfolding. The sky itself seemed to shiver as ancient war machines opened their eyes after centuries of sleep. On the bridge, the crew watched in awe and terror. They're alive, Kale whispered. The Dominion's fleet hesitated. For the first time, their perfect lines broke. Their advance slowed. Even across the void, their fear was clear. Rin's voice was quiet but fierce. So the stories were true. Humanity was never weak. We only forgot what we were. The ancient machines rose higher, weapons glowing with fury older than memory. The oceans boiled. The mountains burned. Earth herself seemed to roar. The crew of the Iron Dawn felt the weight of destiny pressing down upon them. They had not come here only to find their cradle. They had come to awaken the storm buried within it, and in the black void above, the Eridani Dominion prepared to face a humanity reborn. The oceans of Earth boiled as the first of the ancient giants rose from the depths. Water cascaded off armor plates the size of mountains, glowing eyes opening like suns reborn. Their silhouettes were monstrous, shapes of titans that should not exist, built in an age when humanity had dared to play God. The skies trembled as more of them emerged, bursting from the seas, tearing free from buried vaults hidden beneath continents. They were machines, but they moved with a terrible grace, like warriors waking from a long sleep, ready to fight once more. On the Iron Dawn, the crew could only stare. Fear and awe mixed in their faces, their breaths caught in their throats. These were not ships or weapons, they understood. They were something greater, living war machines, echoes of a time when humanity's power had nearly burned the stars themselves. Kale's voice trembled as he read the streams of data pouring in. Captain, there are dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Each one armed with weapons I can't even identify. His fingers shook as he tapped the console. Some of these readings don't even make sense. Energy levels beyond anything we've ever built. Captain Rin stood at the viewport, his eyes fixed on the titans rising below. His jaw was tight, his voice steady. And now they're ours. Earth has woken its guardians. Sentinel's voice echoed through the comms, cold and heavy. Guardians? No, they are executioners. They were never meant to save humanity, only to ensure its enemies were destroyed no matter the cost. The crew shifted uneasily, the words slicing through their fragile hope. Yet outside, the truth unfolded. The Dominion's fleet had halted its advance. For the first time, Their perfect formations broke. The black-armored ships hovered in silence, their weapons glowing but their lines hesitant. The sight of the Titans had shaken even them. Then the silence shattered. The Dominion fired first. Beams of energy, white-hot and violent, lanced across the void toward Earth. But before they struck, one of the Titans raised its arm. A shield of light burst forth, swallowing the beams, bending them harmlessly into the sea. The oceans exploded in steam, but the land remained untouched. The Titans answered. Bolts of energy surged from their bodies, weapons older than memory roaring to life. Entire sections of the Dominion's fleet were torn apart in seconds. Black glass ships shattered, fire blooming across the void. The hunters who had toyed with the Iron Dawn were annihilated like insects before a storm. On the bridge, the crew erupted in cheers and gasps of disbelief. Cale's eyes widened as he watched the impossible unfold. They're winning. Gods, they're actually winning. But Sentinel's voice cut through their joy. Do not mistake power for victory. The Titans will not stop. They will destroy the Dominion, yes, but they will not end with them. Rin turned sharply. What do you mean? They were built to fight until nothing remained, Sentinel said. Enemy or ally, it does not matter. Once awakened, they will burn until the galaxy itself is ash. This was why they were sealed. Humanity feared its own creations. The words chilled the bridge. The crew stared at one another, their cheers fading into silence. Below, the Titans pressed the attack. Waves of fire streaked into the stars, carving through the Dominion ships with terrifying precision. The enemy tried to counter, launching volleys of missiles and beams, but the giants adapted, shifting shields, unleashing storms of light. The battle had shifted, and for the first time, humanity held the upper hand. Yet Cale could not shake Sentinel's warning. His eyes stayed on the screens, watching the energy readings climb higher, hotter, wilder. The Titans were not just fighting. They were feeding. Every blast, every kill seemed to fuel them, their cores glowing brighter with every strike. Their movements grew faster, their attacks fiercer. They're not just weapons, Kyle whispered. They're alive, in some way, and they're hungry. The Iron Dawn joined the battle, its cannons blazing alongside the Titans. Rin gave orders with a steady voice, guiding his crew through the chaos. For a moment, unity surged. Humans and ancient machines fought side by side, and the Dominion fell back, their ships burning, their fleet crumbling. But then, a warning flashed across Cale's console. One of the Titans had locked its targeting systems on the Iron Dawn. Cale's blood ran cold. Captain, they're looking at us. Before Rin could respond, Sentinel spoke again. This is the danger. The Titans know no difference between you and your enemy. If they decide you are a threat, they will erase you. That is their nature. The crew froze, hearts pounding. Their victory suddenly felt fragile, a blade balanced on the edge of disaster. Outside, the Titan's arm shifted. A cannon larger than the Iron Dawn itself began to glow, its energy building in a blinding light. For one heartbeat, it aimed directly at them. Evasive, Rin roared. The Iron Dawn spun hard, engines screaming as the blast fired. A beam of white fire tore past, missing them by mere kilometers, burning a Dominion cruiser into molten fragments. Silence fell on the bridge, broken only by the sound of panicked breaths. The crew knew then. They were not just fighting the Dominion. They were dancing with giants who could crush them at any moment. Rin's eyes hardened. Then we'll control them. Somehow. If these machines belong to humanity, then they will fight for us or we'll die trying to master them. Kyle swallowed hard. And if they can't be controlled? Rin's gaze never left the burning sky outside. His voice was low but unyielding. Then humanity will face the fire of its own making. Better to die as warriors than slaves. Outside, the Titans roared again, their cannons tearing across the stars. Earth had risen. The cradle of humanity had returned. But as the Dominion fell back in fear, Cale felt no triumph. Only dread. For the real war was not only with the enemy in the sky. It was with the monsters now awake beneath their own home, and the giants were only just beginning to remember what they were. The war for the heavens began with fire. Above Earth, the void blazed as the Eridani Dominion unleashed its full fury. Thousands of ships advanced in perfect formation, their weapons glowing like suns, their shadows blotting out the stars. They moved like a storm, vast and endless, determined to burn humanity's cradle into dust once and for all. But Earth was no longer silent. From the oceans and mountains, the Titans had risen. They moved like living gods, their colossal frames glinting in the starlight, their cores pulsing with ancient power. When they struck, the sky itself split apart. Beams of pure light carved through the enemy's lines, tearing warships apart like paper. The seas boiled, the land shook, and the Dominion fleet faltered for the first time in centuries. On the Iron Dawn, the crew fought with everything they had. Cannons thundered, shields flared, and the ship darted between giants and firestorms. The crew shouted over the roar of alarms, their voices raw with fear and determination. The bridge shook with every impact, but Captain Rin stood firm, his voice steady as steel. Target their command ships. Break their lines. Kale's console burned with data, his fingers racing. We've crippled their left flank. But Captain, they're regrouping, the fleet is adapting. Outside, the Dominion showed its strength. New ships entered the battle, larger than anything humanity had ever seen. Their hulls were jagged and black, bristling with weapons that bled white energy. One unleashed a barrage that struck a Titan full in the chest. The giant staggered, its armor cracking, its glow dimming. The crew gasped as the Titan fell back into the sea, vanishing beneath boiling waves. They can kill them, Kale whispered, horror in his voice. Even the Titans can fall. The battle raged. Earth's defenders answered with fury, unleashing storms of light and flame. The oceans erupted as Titans rose higher, their weapons blazing. Entire sections of the Dominion fleet collapsed under their assault. But for every enemy destroyed, more arrived. The void became a furnace burning brighter than any sun. Then the Titans began to change. Kale's eyes widened as he read the energy spikes. Captain, they're overloading. They're drawing in power from the enemy's destruction. His voice trembled. They're feeding on the war. The Titans grew brighter, their movements faster, their strikes more violent. Their cores flared like stars on the brink of collapse. The crew watched in awe and terror as one Titan ripped through 3 Dominion cruisers in a single strike, its roar echoing across the comms. But its eyes glowed too brightly, its energy unstable, dangerous. They're losing control, Sentinel warned, its voice grave. The Titans do not know restraint. They will burn everything. Enemy, ally, even Earth itself. The Iron Dawn shook as another Titan fired, its blast grazing the ship. Alarms wailed, sparks rained from the ceiling. The crew shouted in panic, but Rin's voice cut through the chaos. Hold steady. We need them, for now. But Kale, find me something. A way to control them. Anything. Kale's hands flew across his console, his mind racing. Buried in Sentinel's codes, he found fragments of old designs. Control systems meant to guide the Titans. But the designs were incomplete, fractured by time. His heart pounded as he realized the truth. They can't be controlled remotely, he said, his voice breaking. They need a pilot. Someone inside. The Titans were built to bond with human minds. The crew stared at him, horror etched into their faces. To bond with a Titan was to lose yourself. The machines were too vast, too powerful. A human mind would burn like paper in fire. Before anyone could speak, the Dominion's flagship entered the field. It was enormous. A fortress of black steel larger than a continent, bristling with weapons that glowed brighter than suns. Its presence silenced even the Titans. The Dominion fleet rallied around it, their formation tightening, their firepower doubling. The flagship moved forward with terrible grace, its guns tearing Titans apart one by one. Kale's console screamed warnings. Captain, that ship! It's directing the entire fleet. If we don't destroy it, the Titans will fall. We'll all fall. Rin's eyes hardened. Then we destroy it. Sentinel's voice was low, heavy with sorrow. The Celestial Spear, the greatest weapon ever built, buried beneath Earth's mantle, sealed away. It was forged for this, one strike enough to pierce the heart of any fleet. But it cannot fire itself. It needs a guide. The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood. To guide the Celestial Spear was to die with it. Rin stood tall, his face calm, his voice unshaken. Prepare it, Captain. Kale's voice broke. You can't. There has to be another way. Rin placed a hand on the young officer's shoulder, his grip firm. You're the future, Kale, all of you are. But someone has to light the path. That's my duty. The crew stared at their captain, their eyes filled with grief and respect. No one argued. No one could. Outside, the flagship advanced, its guns blazing, its shadow swallowing Earth. The Titans roared, but even their fury could not stop it. The Iron Dawn shook under the storm, her hull cracking, her crew holding on by sheer will. Then, deep below, the Earth trembled. The celestial spear rose from the crust, a colossal weapon of silver light, its tip glowing brighter than a star. It pointed toward the heavens, toward the Dominion fleet, toward the flagship. On the bridge, Kale's tears burned as he whispered, "Captain." Rin smiled faintly, a warrior's smile. "Eons after Earth's fall, humanity rises again. Remember that," he turned, walking into the chamber of the celestial spear, vanishing into its light. The heavens shook as the weapon charged brighter and brighter, until the void itself turned white. The final blow was coming. The celestial spear rose from the heart of Earth like a pillar of light, tearing through rock and ocean, glowing brighter than any star. Its surface shimmered with silver fire, ancient runes pulsing across its colossal frame. It was not a weapon meant to defend, it was a weapon meant to end. For centuries it had slept, sealed beneath the mantle of Earth, waiting for the day when humanity would have no choice but to wield it. That day had come. Inside its core, Captain Rin stood at the command chamber. He was surrounded by walls of light, streams of energy moving like rivers through the air. His body trembled under the weight of it, the pressure crushing against his bones, his mind swimming in a sea of voices. The spear was alive in its own way, and it demanded a price. To guide it was not just to command, it was to become one with it, to burn in its fire until nothing human remained. Rin knew this, and he accepted it. On the Iron Dawn, Kale's console screamed as readings spiked. "The spear is active. Captain's inside." His voice cracked, his eyes wet, but his hands never stopped moving. Energy levels climbing beyond measurable limits. "If it fires," he swallowed hard. "If it fires, it will destroy everything in its path." Sentinel's voice echoed low and somber. "One strike. One chance. If the spear misses, the Dominion will finish what it began. But if it strikes true, their flagship will fall, and with it, their empire's heart." Outside, the battlefield raged. Titans clashed with Dominion cruisers, their glowing eyes filled with fury. Some had fallen, their broken frames sinking into oceans, their cores burning out like dying suns. Others still fought, their power growing unstable, tearing through enemy lines in storms of fire. Yet none of it mattered now. All eyes turned to the flagship, the black fortress of the Eridani Dominion, looming like a god of war above Earth. The flagship's weapons glowed, preparing a single devastating volley aimed directly at the planet. If it struck, Earth itself would shatter. The Dominion meant not just to conquer, but to erase. "Captain," Kyle whispered to himself, gripping the console so tightly his knuckles went white. "It has to be you. No one else can do this." In the chamber of the spear, Rin's breath grew shallow. The weapon's energy coursed through him, burning his veins, crushing his thoughts. He felt memories not his own, the wars of the ancients, the firestorms that had nearly ended humanity before. The spear remembered everything, and now it demanded his will. Rin closed his eyes. He thought of the crew of the Iron Dawn, brave and broken yet unyielding. He thought of Kale, young and full of hope, who still believed in the future. He thought of Earth, the cradle, alive again after so long. And he thought of all humanity scattered across the stars, waiting for a sign that they were not lost, not forgotten. His voice was barely a whisper, but the spear heard it. For humanity, fire. The spear roared. Light poured from its tip, a beam of pure silver tearing through the void. It split the darkness, cutting straight toward the Dominion flagship. Enemy ships scrambled, firing everything they had to stop it. But the beam consumed their fire, devoured their defenses, and pressed on. It struck the flagship dead center. For one moment, the universe held its breath. Then the black fortress shattered. The explosion lit the heavens, brighter than any star, ripping through the Dominion fleet. Shockwaves tore across space, enemy ships breaking apart, their formations collapsing. The Titans roared in triumph, their voices echoing like thunder. Humanity's cradle was no longer silent. It screamed its defiance across the stars. On the Iron Dawn, the crew watched in stunned silence. Some wept openly. Others shouted in joy. Kale covered his face with trembling hands, tears burning his cheeks. The Dominion's fleet was broken. The hunters scattered, fleeing into the void. The war was not over, but this battle, this day, belonged to humanity. But the bridge grew quiet again as the truth settled in. The spear was silent now. Its glow faded, its runes dimming. Captain Rin was gone. Kale's voice cracked. He gave everything. Sentinel spoke softly, almost like a whisper of sorrow. He is one with the spear now. His sacrifice has written your survival. The crew bowed their heads, For a moment, grief hung heavier than victory, but outside Earth spun quietly, alive and whole. The Titans stood watch, their cores dim but steady, and across the stars the scattered colonies of humanity received the signal at last, not one of warning but one of triumph. "This is Earth," the message carried. "We endure. We rise." Kale looked out at the planet, his heart heavy with loss but burning with new resolve. He lit the path for us. Now it's ours to walk. Around him the crew straightened. Soldiers, engineers, medics, they were no longer wanderers in the void. They were guardians of a reborn world. Humanity had a home again, and with it a purpose. The heavens were scarred, the future uncertain. The Dominion still lived, and war still waited beyond the stars. But the day Earth returned, the balance shifted. Humanity had risen from ashes, and the galaxy would never forget it. In the silence of the bridge, Kale whispered the words that would echo through generations. Eons after Earth's fall, humanity rose, not as broken exiles but as warriors of the stars. And above the cradle of mankind, the heavens burned with the light of a new dawn.